What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and in continuing my series of Disney movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Alice in Wonderland is no perfect movie. And I think the majority of you probably know what happens even if you haven't seen it. A girl named Alice falls down a magic rabbit hole searching for a white talking rabbit, but finds herself in Wonderland where she comes across several strange characters like the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, the Cheshire Cat, the list goes on. What I wasn't expecting was this was a movie where, despite all the nonsense and the surreal, quirky things that you see, Alice still goes through a character arc. Because at the beginning, she's very disappointed with the rules that she has to go by in life and wonders what would happen if she lived in a world where nonsense ruled over logic. But as she spends more time in Wonderland, where every character has their own idea of sense and logic to the point where it might as well be nonsense to her, that story can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. A girl being thrown into a world run by adults is easy to assume that the movie's about inevitably growing up and having to face the fact that there are rules in life made upon you by complete strangers as opposed to just your parents or the rest of your family. It could also be, as typical Disney fare, a story about how children are expected to grow up too soon. And this next one's a stretch, but you could even make the argument the movie's about rebelling against authority. I mean, Alice does consume mushrooms in order to grow stronger over the course of her journey, and the tyrannical queen disciplines people over the slightest things that make her upset. So there are a variety of ways you can interpret this movie, and as long as you're entertained, you're going to have a good time. I gotta be honest though, I wasn't always entertained by it, but I'm gonna stick with the positives for as long as I can. For starters, Kathryn Beaumont gives a really good vocal performance as Alice, and she really sells the progression that she goes through where at first she's very innocent and naive, but under the pressure of this new location, she has to really use her wits and figure out how to communicate with these people and get herself out of trouble. And you know what? She would go on to play Wendy in Peter Pan, another story about inevitably growing up but not growing up too soon. And the effort really goes to show. I'm kind of surprised she didn't do other Disney movies like this. And as for Wonderland itself, it's just as strange and surreal as people make it out to be. The characters and creatures all have really creative designs. I've been told that some of these designs actually do kind of match the original illustrations, which, if that's the case, that's pretty impressive. The animation is a lot faster and fluid than most Disney movies to really sell the insane nature of the movie. And out of all the Wonderland characters, Sterling Holloway is really subtle in how sneaky he is as the Cheshire Cat, and Ed Wynn's vocal performance you can actually see on screen as he's playing the Mad Hatter. In fact, he actually reenacted some of the script in live action segments so that the animators can look at him for storyboard references, and you can really see the physicality that he brought to his own vocal performance. I mean, how often can you really say that? But the thing that really kept me from getting sucked into this movie, and this might not even be a problem for some people, is the pacing in regards to how they bridge the gap from each previous strange scenario to the next. Instead of throwing Alice into the next one immediately after the last in order to keep her and the audience on the edge of their seats and not really have a chance to breathe, or to slowly build upon each strange scenario and make him even bigger and even stranger, we don't really get that. After every scene ends, it always cuts to a fade where Alice is walking right into the next one, and we don't really get a chance to soak in the moment or really understand how it affected Alice right away, or even what possessed her to keep going forward. The most we ever really learn about Alice is through a ton of inner monologues that she speaks out loud, which, you know, it makes sense considering she's the only one who really understands herself in this world, but at the same time, there are a lot of times where she just says, "Oh, I wonder what this could be. Now, what do you suppose is in there?" And it's just like, do you really have to say stuff like that? Do you really have to talk to the eat me and drink me labels like they're alive? Because you might have had too many mushrooms if that's the case. Plus, as strange and surreal as this movie is, it's not consistently surreal and strange. And some people are going to say, well, each character has their own idea of sense and logic to the point where it really is nonsensical, so what do you expect? What I was expecting for each strange scenario to become bigger and even stranger and more tense as time goes by, and at the very end of the movie, when it's about the Queen of Hearts, it absolutely is. But when you go from Tweedledum and Tweedledee to Alice being a giant in her house, I didn't really feel what was stranger about it, even though it technically was. And I think a part of that is the majority of the characters aren't really all that strange and kooky, despite the fact that the more memorable ones, like the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, they're mostly in the second half of the movie. The first half of the movie are a lot of stuffy, stereotypically snooty British people who are obviously the adult metaphors, but they're not really done in an entertaining or even in a surreal way. And even when they are, you can't really help the fact that you're just watching a snooty British adult talk, that you don't really focus on how cryptically they're speaking or what it really means to Alice as she's trying to learn something. So, overall, Alice in Wonderland does have a lot of memorable moments and a lot of more surreal imagery than you would expect from Disney movies. I was just kind of hoping that the 14 story writers, only 13 of them got credit too, could just like bridge the gap between each strange scenario and build upon it to make it even stranger, because I didn't really feel that, and I felt that it was a very essential thing for Alice to learn how to face adulthood at the right moments. So, for all those reasons, even though there is a lot to admire and a lot to say it could have been better, I'm going to give Alice in Wonderland a 3 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Alice in Wonderland, do let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. And be sure to let me know what you thought of the Burton one, because even though I'd say this one is still better than the Burton one does still have its fans. Be sure to stay tuned for more Disney reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.